Welcome into SEC Live here on the Voice of College Football. Andrew Miller, Jackson Johnson, and Tucker Harlan here on a Wednesday evening. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. As you are tuning in, if you could leave us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and have the notifications turned on so you do know when we do go live. And as Jackson always says, tell all the friends, cashiers at Publix, everybody you know about what we're doing here on the channel.
Tell the friends, the family, and the cashiers at Publix.
There we go. Follow SEC at the Voice of College Football, and follow our social handles as we have below our names here. Keep up with everything we're doing, talking about SEC football. Gonna hit the transfer portal once again because that is winding down and feels like we've mostly got these rosters set at this point, but a couple key moves still to be made that we're going to talk about here tonight. Then we're going to take a look. ESPN put out their way too early top 25. Where does the SEC fall within those rankings? What are our thoughts on the SEC teams in those rankings? Is there anybody that was left out that should be involved? And to close out the show, Athlon put out their first SEC predictions for the 2026 season, and we'll give our thoughts. Who's too high? Who's too low? So all of that to come later tonight. But gentlemen, how's it going?
Going well. I suppose I think I'm finally over Tennessee's crushing basketball defeat on Saturday against Kentucky. That was all kinds of embarrassing because they were up 18 points in that game and managed to blow it and lose the game by 2 in a game where they led pretty much all the way up until the final minute. So that's frustrating. Still don't know what exactly is going on with the NCAA with this whole Charles Bediako thing. They amaze me each day with their stupidity. And to borrow another Jacksonism here, staying out of the cold, we don't know for sure. There have been forecasts of a potential blizzard in this part of the world. Now, it has the projections, depending on which models you look at, have moved to the north just slightly, but it's still going to be a pretty frigid weekend here in Tennessee. It's going to be cold, so we're preparing for that here.
Make sure you got a lot of lawn sleeves and a lot of woolly blankets.
Yes.
Yeah, the ice storm threat across the South. I am not going to be the one who gets responsible for saying it's diminishing and then something happens. So don't put those words in my mouth. But definitely a lot of shifting from early in the week when it felt like the entire Southeast was about to get blanketed with 2 inches of ice to where now it feels things are shifting north a little bit. But yeah, definitely still something the entire Southeast can be paying close attention to. Ice is no fun. Snow can be fun. I know some people hate snow, but snow can at least be fun, even though it does shut things down in the South. You don't feel like, you're going to be without power. The ice, though, that's a very serious situation. I guess we're not having to worry about what Midwesterners are dealing with because right now everything's going viral over the idea of exploding trees across social media. Right now, that's what everyone's getting hyped up about. But yeah, the winter weather getting serious here at the end of January. I mean, look, even down here on the Mississippi coast where I'm at, obviously we're not really worried about any of the ice threat. That seems super unlikely, but it's going to get down. I mean, parts of the country are going to hear this and say that's nothing, but we're going to have probably forecast low feels like temperatures in the teens, which for us even feels like temperatures in the teens. That happens maybe once, twice a year, if that. So, yeah, huge Arctic blast coming across the country, going to be affecting all of us in SEC country, as we're talking about here on SEC Live. Jackson, what's going on with you?
Oh, it's going pretty all right. Just kind of keeping busy, especially when we had a breaking news live stream on the Alabama channel, which I can tell that later on, which we got one Mississippi State's guys. Sorry, Andrew, but
you can have him.
Oh, man, that's funny. But yeah, so we had some pretty good days on there, but it's only turned to 27 days till we see Alabama, Tennessee, and I believe Mississippi State will be playing on week 1 Saturday of the 2026 season. But somebody could be playing on a Thursday night for week 1, which that means it's only turned to 25 days. But we'll know more on what the 2026 TV schedule will look like when it gets to the month of May. I'm just counting down to it.
I was trying to think, when's the last time State did not open up the season on the Saturday? I think 2012, they might have played a Thursday night game. They played
LSU on a Thursday night.
That was 07. That was 45-0 in Starkville. Yeah.
Louisiana Tech in 08 was Saturday night on ESPN or ESPN2.
Yeah, I remember 2012 they played Jackson State, and I'm thinking it might have been a Thursday night, possibly, but they might have just played that on Saturday. I don't remember for sure. They must have been Saturday. I know Tucker's Vols have done a lot of the weeknight games to kick off.
They have been on all sides of the Labor Day spectrum in the last 15 years, I guess, because they played at least 3 times on Thursdays. 16, 22, and 21 were all Thursday starts. 2012, that the Cordero Patterson game against Tennessee State, that was a Friday. Of course, Saturdays are a given most years. They played Utah State on Sunday in 2014, and they played Georgia Tech on a Monday in 2017. So we've covered all the bases here in the last 15 years. I don't think that's going to be
the last time Alabama was played on a weekday at all during the season was in 2010 against Georgia State on ESPNU.
Wasn't the Iron Bowl Black Friday that year?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because that was the second straight year the Iron Bowl was on Black Friday. And I'll be honest, I kind of want to see it be on a Black Friday, once every decade or twice, every now and again. That'd be pretty cool. But to be honest, I want to see. I don't think that's going to happen, but I want to see Alabama, East Carolina be played on Thursday night or Friday night instead of like Saturday.
Yeah, I feel like Bama always makes sure as they get their Saturday night to open up the season. But we'll obviously have plenty of scheduling talk as we get closer to the season kicking off. Although there is scheduling talk on social media right now because I don't know. Did y'all see? This is not SEC related. We're just talking about random things. Did y'all see the Texas Tech schedule getting passed around for 2026?
No.
Oh yeah.
Let's pull this up real quick. I'm not going to pull it up on the screen. I mean, Jackson might if he wants to search for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's
here we go. And so
if you search Texas Tech, it's the first thing that comes up on Twitter.
Oh man. Well, I've got it from FBS schedules.
They put this out officially. This is SEC fans being complete and total haters right now. So they're going to open up the season with Abilene Christian. Then they're playing Oregon State on the road. Okay. Houston, Sam Houston, at Colorado, Arizona State, at Cincinnati, Arizona, West Virginia, at Oklahoma State, at Baylor, home against TCU to end the season. That is one of the most pathetically easy schedules I have ever seen in my entire life. Now, I am, I even being on the SEC show, I'm probably the least SEC biased and the least of an SEC homer just because I support all of college football and I have nothing against the Big 12. The Big 12 puts out a lot of really fun, exciting games. But, oh my goodness, I mean, I don't know who on that schedule is supposed to be a good team next year. Arizona State probably.
Houston was solid this year. I don't know if that carries over.
I think Houston had a bunch of close wins and is like losing players. I could be wrong. Willie Fritz is a great coach. Oklahoma State obviously messed to make her.
Crap. Really crap. Good team. Team that can have a potential turnaround season in the second year of the Rich Rod era, but everybody else is just crap.
I'd kill for that schedule as an SEC team.
I saw a Texas fan put out a tweet that said, like, you just know we're going to hit December and there's going to be a 2-loss SEC team behind this team in the rankings.
God.
Yeah.
Here's the deal, guys. Like, this is why SEC fans can't stand other conferences sometimes, is it's like, yes, we don't deny that you have good teams at the top of your conference, but you're not tested the entire season until you get to the postseason. Like, it's that way in the Big Ten for the most part. Like, I mean, half of Oregon's games are just UCLA in a 3-win year, Northwestern with 4 or 5 wins some seasons. Minnesota will max out at 6, maybe 7 wins in a season. Purdue is not guaranteed more than 6 wins a lot of seasons. Like, you're you're just guaranteed so much on that schedule. Like you're just spotting yourself 9 free wins if you schedule the 3 crappy non-conference teams that the Big Ten, Matt Rule specifically in the Big Ten, likes to do. Yeah. So this is why some SEC fans can't stand conferences like that, because they don't play anybody for 95% of their season.
Yeah, no, it's a bit of a joke for sure.
I feel like Lincoln Riley is definitely going to be in that category of Matt Rule, because you remember how he tried bailing out of that LSU game, and they were like, it's already booked. We've already got the plane tickets, everything. We saw how he acted about Notre Dame. We saw how he acted about having to choose between going to LSU or Florida, staying at Oklahoma, and then goes to USC to avoid competition. But then, ironically enough, he's dealing with tough competition in the Big Ten, and Utah is just beating the tar out of him in the 2022 Pac-12 title game.
Yeah, some of these other schedules, it's definitely a joke when you compare it to what a lot of SEC slates look like, especially with the non-conference requirements. That's like the SEC, even at a 9-game schedule, is requiring like the non-conference games to still have a high-level game there. So, it's insane. But I guess we can stop talking about other conference schedules. Let's talk about the SEC. And we don't have a ton of transfer portal news, but big headlines. Officially, LSU has landed the top-rated edge rusher in the transfer portal, Princewill Umanmielen from Ole Miss. Obviously started his career at Nebraska, was one of those players that was kind of flashing potential but hadn't done much from a production standpoint on the field. Last year, though, in Oxford, huge breakout season, was an all-SEC performer. I think had 9 sacks on the year. Incredibly productive player in Pete Golding's defense. Well, he had announced his intentions to return to Ole Miss. This is, that kind of become a commonplace. And then Lane Kiffin does what Lane Kiffin does. They go and they find a way to get him. He does end up entering the portal, and Ole Miss ultimately allowed him to. But it's an interesting situation because he had agreed to a deal with Ole Miss. LSU is actually going to have to pay some buyout money to the Rebels, close to $600,000 in buyout money, that's like the biggest sign of the times in college football. Let's hit that first. I mean, what are our thoughts on that? We're seeing buyouts paid between schools for players.
Jesus.
Yeah, I think if you are to get around lawsuits now with this stuff, and of course we saw it kind of taking shape with Damon Williams. Of course, you see Duke doing it with Darian Mensah right now. But here's the thing, and this is something that I've learned about college football players just from having watched Tennessee the last season with one player in particular, in Boo Carter, and it's this. If the guy doesn't want to be at your school, he doesn't want to be at your school. Make the school that he's transferring to pay the buyout money because, I mean, who's to say, like, if Ole Miss had locked Princewill Umanmielen into that deal and he would have just, been awful for much of the 2026 season, his head wasn't really there, then he transfers to LSU anyway, well, then you've wasted an entire year with him. So, a part of me hates the fact that we're even having this discussion, but at the same time, it's like, if a guy didn't want to be there, he didn't want to be there, and you better not keep him around.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this is going to be an interesting storyline from when we get to September 19th of 2026 for the 2026 edition of the Magnolia Bowl. Because we not only see Lane Kiffin going up against the school that he left, but snatching some of the coaches from Ole Miss, and snatching some of the players from Ole Miss over to LSU. So that's just kind of sinking in a little bit. Like, holy Toledo.
We got the comment about the rise for the Big Ten. That's great. But, look, I think it's a sign of the times for sure, having to pay that buyout. I'd also agree with Tucker, your big point. Like, If the guy doesn't want to be there, like keeping him on the roster does you no good. And frankly, I think the buyout thing makes a whole lot of sense. Like if you're going to have a player signed to your roster, and the same with the coaches, there's got to be some sort of compensation for it. Which I'm sure LSU, a player of Princewill's caliber, you feel it's worth it, right? Whatever they're going to be paying him from an NIL standpoint, like to get a player like that that can be that type of an impact pass rusher, it's worth it. But if you're Ole Miss, I mean, there's an extra $600,000 to work with. Obviously, not a whole lot of talent left, which is why there's really not a lot of portal news to this point. But where can you divert that to go out and get some more players in? Look, from an LSU impact standpoint, I mean, that's huge. He's a fantastic player. You already had Jordan Ross, the Tennessee transfer, as another edge rusher. Stephylan Green over from Clemson. Malik Blockton from Auburn. They've really done a good job bringing in some very talented pieces along that defensive line for sure. So I think you're looking at LSU, probably that's going to be one of the strengths of the team is what they've got up front on the defensive line. We know what Lane can do offensively. It's another piece in place for LSU to probably be a pretty good team right away in Baton Rouge, which we'll have maybe some more thoughts on that later when we get into the preseason top 25 or the way too early top 25 in some of the SEC rankings. Comment here. It's the school's loss if they give the wrong kid the opportunity. No one should have to buy that player from the school.
I think it's a little different in this scenario, though, right? Because he had already signed to play at Ole Miss, and then he ends up going to LSU. You have to think about that too. One other thing I want to mention while we're talking about this with NIL buyouts, and especially if these things become more commonplace, do we start seeing some of the coach buyouts decrease in monetary value here soon? Like, I feel like that just has to be coming at some point.
They're going to have to. They're going to have to, honestly.
No. Because the coaches still hold the agents still hold all the power.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's the reality. Like there's a quote, Richard Johnson for 247 CBS Sports, who also was also a part of the Split Zone Duo podcast. They do a lot of coaching search stuff on that show, and he's pretty well connected when it comes to the coaching industry. And the point he continues to make is buyouts are supposed to be prohibitive. Buyouts exist because you are not supposed to pay $50 million to get rid of the coach. Schools have just decided to start doing it, but the coaches continue to yield. So the buyouts are going to continue to be that high because it's the schools feel they have to pay that because they're scared of the idea of, well, we have a chance to hire a Lane Kiffin. What if we can't? We have a chance to hire Mike Norvell. Like when you're Florida State and you're sitting here a couple years ago and Mike Norvell is being pursued by Alabama and you give him a deal to make sure that doesn't happen, and look where it's gotten him. Like the schools are so terrified of the idea because there's still this mindset of if you don't have the coach, you're not going to be successful. And look, to be fair, even as much as it's this player first era, I still think college football, you better have the right coach in place. Like, I think you've got to have the right guy leading the program. And like, you can't just expect that, okay, an average replacement level coach can come in. And if we give him the right players, we're going to be super successful. I feel like you probably want to have a guy that you feel can run the program at the highest level. So again, the coaches know this, the agencies know this. And the thing is they know there's always a school that's going to be willing to do it. Like the key to making this change is there has to be multiple schools. It's not even multiple. Everyone has to be on board as the universities across college football in agreement. We are not going to pay it. If you like, we're going to call your bluff, and you're not going to have an opportunity if those are your demands. Nobody's going to do that.
Yeah.
Like somebody's going to be willing to pay always.
Yeah. I just think that, well, if the right people don't step in with, this player stuff and still kind of being in the wild west of this portal and NIL thing, you could see it potentially get to that point. But although who really knows, because as I discussed to begin the show with an issue related to basketball, there's no real governing body to enforce this stuff still. And I don't know when there's going to be.
It's basically the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
It's completely nuts, but
yeah, no, it is. It is, and you're right. Could a governing body step in and say that we're going to put limitations on this stuff? At some point, limitations are going to have to be put on the portal side of it, and I feel like that's what's going to get reined in before the coaches do. Before anything happens with the coaching contracts, at some point they're going to address what's happening in the portal. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I think you have to. But in the short term, I do think it's fair to have some sort of a buyout in place because, I mean, look, you have a kid signed to a deal, you were expecting him to be a part of your roster, and then he goes and says, actually, I'm gone. Like, how are you going to make sure you get that money back? But also, you lose the ability to go and get players depending on when this happens. Like, that's the other concern here. Like, if you lose a guy that Duke is a great example of Darian Mensah. Where's Duke supposed to turn for a quarterback now?
Walker Eggett.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the name I keep seeing attached to Duke. That's why I said it.
Well, like
Gavin Suckup. We haven't mentioned Gavin
Suckup. I know. Like, our golden boy still has not landed anywhere. He's gonna end up at some FCS school and go throw for 5,000 yards. You all watch. We're going to be right all along about Gavin Suckup. But like, if you're Duke has NIL money. Like, I don't think maybe people don't realize that, but like they actually have the money to go and get players. I mean, it's not surprising. It's another one of those private schools that's absolutely loaded, but it's just for so long they didn't spend that money, and now they are. Very Vanderbilt-esque. They had to spend a ton to get Darian Mensah in the first place. If you just lose Darian Mensah 2 weeks ago, all right, it sucks, but we'll go find another guy to step in. They're losing him at this point in the portal. There's nobody at the quarterback position to this point. So I do think there has to be some sort of a payback. And if we're going to have any sort of fairness with this whatsoever, which I know fairness has never been a thing in college football, but you have to have some sort of regulation in place. If you're going to lose a player that had already agreed financially he was going to come be a part of your program, yeah, I think the school that he ends up going to has to give you something in return. So it makes a whole lot of sense. Back to the LSU side of it, like I said, I think defensive line is in place. I know they got a lot of replace elsewhere on the defense, especially in the secondary. But if you got a big-time defensive front, that always gives you something to work with. We've talked about receiver. We've talked about tight end, running back. Obviously, Sam Levitt at quarterback, big deal. The final question for LSU is offensive line, and they've had to go portal heavy at the O-line. They've brought in a handful of transfers at that spot, guys who were starters at other schools, guys who maybe were some young, intriguing talent at other schools. The big name, though, that everyone is after, Jordan Seaton, the Colorado transfer, who hit the portal, I guess, about a week and a half ago now at this point. Former five-star prospect, number one offensive tackle in the country coming out of high school back in the 2024 class. 2-year starter for the Buffs, hit the portal and immediately he was a consensus top 5 player in the transfer portal, top player at his position. I saw one guy that, like, the day he entered the portal, that's probably, you might be talking about the most coveted transfer in history. And obviously history is, short term, but I think about this, and I think it's a fair statement to make, because while, yes, there's been big time quarterbacks hit the portal, big time receivers, big time edge rushers, offensive line is a spot where there is simply never super high caliber players in the portal, because ultimately the guys that are big time talent at offensive line, if the school has the means to keep them in place, they keep them. When you look at offensive linemen who transfer out, and it's because schools recognize like how much development is a big part of that spot. Like, raw athleticism does not always win offensive line. There is like experience and development matters a ton at that position. So you can't just count on saying, well, we'll just replace him with another 4 or 5 star. If that guy hasn't played at all, he's probably going to have some struggles. So that is one of those spots teams try to hold on to. When you typically look at the highest rated offensive linemen in the portal, it's usually guys who are solid starters at other school, who are solid starters elsewhere, who went to their current school, said, I need you to pay me X amount of money. And that school said, no, you're good, but you ultimately are not worth that. We can find someone who can do what you can we can find someone who can do the same job as you for half that price tag, if not less. You go off, get elsewhere. I'm sure Tucker could tell you about Lance Hurd, would be a great example of that, who's a solid player. And I know the left tackle thing is a big deal for him. He's not a terrible player, though, but he wanted $3 million from Tennessee for a guy that's not worth $3 million at tackle. And I'm sure Kentucky probably did pay him the $3 million to make it happen to get him to go to Lexington. But that's kind of a perfect example of it. So those are typically the top end transfers at offensive line. That, and then the guys who were the highly ranked young players who just haven't played yet, but they still have the high talent ceiling. I say all this to get to the point of, like, you don't have these super high caliber players available at the position. Jordan Seaton is that guy. This guy's going to be a first round pick next year. And he has been fantastic through 2 years at Colorado. A legit big time player at one of the most coveted positions in left tackle. You make a case there's not been a transfer that is as coveted as this. And obviously he was connected to a lot of big name programs, Oregon, Miami, LSU, as we'll talk about. Texas was in the game for a little bit, although they've gone elsewhere. They've gotten their commitment of the kid from Wake Forest stepping in. But huge, huge deal. LSU felt they had him over the weekend. They felt that, like, he was on campus. They thought he was going to Monday night, was supposed to stay in town for a dinner that he canceled, was going to leave, go to Oregon. They kept him in town through that evening. They took him to the freaking governor's mansion. They literally, I'm not joking, that happened. The LSU thought they had this piece. He left Baton Rouge without signing. He's back. I believe he's in Atlanta right now.
Ooh.
Miami's still in play. Oregon, he canceled his visit there, but Dan Lanning and the staff went out to go see him. And I would be remiss as the Mississippi State fan on the show to not mention that Mississippi State is not completely eliminated. I don't think Mississippi State's getting him, but State made a big push when he visited Starkville back Thursday night into Friday. I don't think he's going to Mississippi State, but he's got a lot of schools pushing him. He's still not fully committed. What do we think is going to happen here?
Oh, goodness. So here's the thing. You're right, Andrew. He is terrific as an on-field product. He was phenomenal for Colorado in year one. I've written a couple things on this guy. I mean, he played all 13 games as a true freshman at Colorado. And you know, he was all Big 12 that season. I believe he was all Big 12 again this season. Really terrific for that team and gave them something they needed pretty desperately with Shedeur Sanders on that offensive line, some protection. So you see his product on the field, and it's pretty amazing. Now, obviously, we're not really supposed to judge books by their covers, but I see it in the comments here, but again, from Shot by Pat. Jordan likes to be chased. He did the same type thing when signing with Colorado. That's what I'm getting at. So I say this because Tennessee was in the mix with him. And Colorado, I don't think was anywhere in like his top 5 schools that he had announced when he's going into this commitment. So he does the commitment, I believe, on Undisputed with Skip Bayless, Shannon Sharp at the time. He chooses Colorado. And then all of us Tennessee people are just like, yeah, okay. This dude is could be a little bit of a head case off the field. Of course, don't judge a book by its cover at that point. But then there were some things that surfaced here pretty recently. He made a video created by the media department over there at Colorado that was filmed under the impression that he was returning to Colorado. He used the video to leverage it into saying, hey, I'm entering the transfer portal. That means one of two things. He's either an LSU Tiger or he is a Miami Hurricane.
Jeez.
That's what it feels like to me.
And here we've got this article from Tucker Harlan on College Football HQ on SI talking about Jordan Seaton. And as you say, Tucker, he's expected to choose between 2 schools.
Yes. It feels like it's LSU and Miami at this point. I know Oregon's been lumped in there, and who knows? It could still be Oregon. You know, the Phil Knight Nike money is going to speak for itself. But at the same time, man, I just with everything that we know about the portal and NIL and what is and is not considered tampering, it would not surprise me if Lane Kiffin or Mario Cristobal was in on this guy.
So apparently Lane went and followed him to Atlanta to make a push there. Now, look, I will say
this. He did the same thing with Sam Levitt in Knoxville.
He did. I will say, and like I've got the perspective of, one of my team is fighting here. And again, I don't expect him to be a Mississippi State Bulldog. I think State's been more of a factor than has been led on nationally. I think there's just an overwhelming assumption of there's no chance that can happen. Mississippi State's got the money to make it happen, and the Phil Lodeholt connection is legitimate. Like apparently that did matter, which is why he even took the visit in the first place. But because of that, like we've been able to keep up with what's going on in that search. And I will say, like the wanting to be chased, that's fair. And there probably is a little bit of a reputation of that now. I also think there may be a case of genuinely trying to figure this thing out and working through the options. Like it's really easy to go and take a visit and be wowed and just say, all right, I'm done. This is where I'm going. I do think he's working through his options and considering them. Miami's interesting. And one of, this was shared a few days back. So, we'll see. But I know one of Mississippi State's insiders, they've heard they don't think Miami is super in it. And that they don't know that that's the best place that he ultimately ends up at. What would be the best place for him? Now, I will say, speaking objectively, like if I was an offensive lineman wanting to get developed, I would want to go play for Mario Cristobal. And then the O-line coach, Alex Mirabal, is fantastic as well. Like I don't know a whole lot of O-line coaches across college football, but I know Alex Mirabal, which tells you he's really good. Like if I was speaking objectively, offensive lineman wanting to go get developed, I think that would be the place to go. It seems though they would prefer he go elsewhere. It's just sort of the line. I'm not saying he won't be at Miami. That's just what I've read on the situation. My lean is LSU. I feel like this is I have a hard time betting against Lane at this point. And Lane always tends to find a way. He's the portal king for a reason. Do have another comment here by Shot by Pat. Don't be surprised if he withdraws. His cousin just signed with CDU and re-asked if we wanted to play together, but that's before he hit the portal. That would be something if he were to withdraw at this point and return to Colorado with all he's done, which we'll talk about here in a second of a player withdrawing from the portal, another inch there. But it's interesting. I'll say this. If you're LSU and you get him, then I think we're having serious conversations about LSU 2026 as a legit contender within the SEC. I think when you have a player like that at left tackle, and I know people can look at Colorado and their struggles on the offensive line. I think LSU has more O-line talent around a potential addition in Jordan Seaton. If you've got a dude like that at left tackle with the talent that they're going to have at the skill positions, with Sam Levitt, who I've made my thoughts on very clear, but still a talented player, and Lane Kiffin, Charlie Weiss running that offense is going to click. That offense is going to put a lot of points on the board. We talked about earlier, especially now with Princewill Umanmielen coming in. I think the defensive line is going to be really talented. And if you got the defensive line, you can play solid defense. Or at least you should be able to. Maybe Tucker would push back against that with how Tennessee performed this year. But if you've got D-line, you should play well defensively. I think if LSU gets them, you're talking about a team that's genuinely in the mix within the SEC. If they don't, I think it becomes a much more volatile situation in Baton Rouge, in my opinion, because I don't know if they've got that left tackle spot figured out. I think they kind of that's the sort of the last thing they're figuring out. Do they have a guy there? We'll see if they get him. I did just allude to it. Tucker, Tennessee got some good news regarding here.
Yeah, they sure did. With Arion Carter officially coming back to Tennessee. So he had declared for the NFL draft prior to the bowl game, opted out of the bowl game, which is generally a sign that this guy is gone for good. But evidently he got his draft grades back and did not like them. And he figured, well, shoot, maybe I should go back down to college. Tennessee at the time had, I believe, already 6 linebackers in its room for next season, just because you had Amari Campbell getting signed through the portal, former Penn State linebacker. And then, of course, you had Jeremiah Thielander, Jaden Perlotti, and Edwin Spillman coming off last year's roster. And then you got the 2 linebackers coming in. So you're already going to have 6 guys in the mix there. So it was going to be hard for him to come back. So he entered the transfer portal initially. I think, however, the intent from the time being was that he was going to come back to Tennessee, because I could just tell from him loyalty was very important. And I say that having been in the room with him during a media availability on the fateful day in which a certain quarterback announced he was transferring away from Tennessee in April. So I figured it was a situation where they weren't going to be able to get him back, but evidently they worked something out and they were able to get the deal done. And I would just go ahead and say this. Tennessee might have the deepest linebacker room in the country. I mean, you have got 7 really, really strong bodies in that linebacker room now with Arion Carter coming back. And you look at what they got coming in. They signed 2 of the top 10 linebackers in the 2026 recruiting cycle. So it looks really good, and that's a position that I'm really excited to see what Tennessee can do with this next season.
Very talented there in the middle of the defense, especially with Carter returning. Jackson, do you want to talk about Bama's commitment that you hit earlier in the show?
Oh, man. Yeah, we got him from Mississippi State. Javen James from Mississippi State. He is the 6th offensive lineman commit to the 2026 portal, the 18th portal commit for the 2026 portal class for Alabama, and the 2nd guy that Alabama has gotten from Mississippi State. And I got to tell you, I'm really looking forward to seeing October 3rd, 2026 between Alabama and Mississippi State, because that could be a pretty good storyline. And Andrew, you've seen him a lot throughout the 1 year he was at Mississippi State for 2025. How have you felt about James?
Okay. So Javen James started his career at Akron, started 9 games back last season, transferred to Maryland in the spring, and then after the spring window came to Mississippi State. State had to do a last year because we still had 2 portal windows. State had brought in some guys offensive line in the winter that basically they were all signed before Phil Loadholt was hired as O-line coach. Loadholt came in, they went through the spring and basically looked at like half the guys in that room and were like, you guys suck, goodbye. And they went and added like 5 more transfers in the spring window. James was one of them as a redshirt sophomore. 6'6". He was like 295 or so coming out of Akron and put on a bunch of weight. He was playing at 320 this year. So really filled out his frame, prototypical SEC tackle size, really good length. Was not expected to be a contributor this season. He was not someone that was really factoring in. He didn't travel with the team to the season opener for Southern Miss. Was not a part of the 2 deep for that game. And it wasn't like a disciplinary thing. They just were not expecting him to be a part of things, which that game happened. State's starting right tackle, Blake Steen, goes down with injury in the first half. They end up moving starting left tackle Albert Reese over to right tackle, and then backup left tackle Jimothy Lewis, who was a young talent State fans had been pretty excited about, stepped in at left tackle. They play the rest of the game. Well, then they go into the next week against Arizona State, and you find out Albert Reese is hurt, and Albert Reese is going to be out for that game. So they put Jimothy Lewis at right tackle, and starting at left tackle against Arizona State was Javen James, which was a big surprise for – I may be mixing up if Albert Reese got hurt in that game or not. He may have been available. But James ended up winning the starting job anyway at left tackle in the week leading up to practice. And he performed well in that game against Arizona State, which had a pretty good defensive line. Not super great pass rushers, but a solid defensive line. Played well in that game. And I think early in the season performed pretty well. Rough game against Texas A&M. And as the season went along, just kind of started to have a few more struggles. Was really rough against Missouri. That was a ugly performance on his part. Did have some good games though. Like I said, Arizona State, Texas, he was solid in that game against a good Texas defensive line. Up and down player, played both left and right tackle for State. There's promise with him for sure. Now, the reason he hit the portal, and this happened a couple of days ago, James was not happy Mississippi State was actively pursuing Jordan Seaton and other left tackles. And today, State did sign an offensive tackle from UAB, Brandon Snee, who was a starter for the Blazers at left tackle this past season. He, I think back like a week and a half ago, put stuff on social media where, look, I mentioned he had really rough games. And he was probably a lot better than most State fans will give him credit for, because we were talking before the show and I mentioned, O-line, the phrase everybody uses is you don't get nobody notices you until you screw up. And unfortunately for James, is when he did screw up, it was very noticeable. So his opinion amongst the fan base had taken a pretty big hit. Everyone has kind of said, yeah, State's got to improve upon that. He took to Twitter and was kind of made a little remark, he making it very clear he had seen what fans were saying online, posted his highlight reel from the season. And then we find out at the end of last week that he was pretty ticked off at the coaching staff that they were pursuing another offensive lineman. And they told him he wanted to hit the portal. State didn't want to lose him. I mean, they felt like there was still the ability to develop him and have him as a swing tackle, have him as a depth piece on the team, or if you need him to start, he could step in or be a starter at right tackle. They did not want him to be State starting left tackle for 2026. That was the big thing, is they felt they needed to get somebody else in there. He was not happy with that. He hits the portal, and it gets processed officially yesterday, and then very quickly gets picked up by Bama. Look, there's potential there. He still has a couple years left to play. He's got the frame. He's got the athleticism and physicality. It's just like the low moments have been quite low. So that's why Mississippi State fans have been pretty snarky about it. But look, honestly, offensive line recruiting in the transfer portal is the epitome of one man's trash is another man's treasure. And that's not me trying to call Javen James trash. That is me pointing out, you look at the kids who hit the portal in offensive line, unless outside of the Jordan Seatons of the world, and it is just accepted. Like, most of those guys have flaws. And if you go and pick them up elsewhere, you're bringing in a guy that's got a lot of starting experience. Is he really a great player? He's got potential. We'll see what happens. What's most interesting to me here, and this applies, Mississippi State lost a few guys to the portal on offensive line where it's similar situations where they played a lot this year, but were not guys that State felt confident in for going into 2026, who have now landed at other power conference programs. I mentioned Jimothy Lewis. He's at Cal. Bama was recruiting him for a second. And then you also had Zach Owens and I'm blanking on his name. They had Zach Owens and another offensive lineman went to Missouri. Luke Work. Zach Owens and Luke Work at Missouri, and now you have Javen James at Alabama. As I said, Mississippi State felt they wanted to upgrade over pretty much all of those guys. It'll be very interesting to see if Mississippi State offensive line doesn't pan out the way they want it to. If any of those guys, especially James going to Alabama, end up having solid seasons, there can be some tough conversations in Starkville over it.
Yikes.
It was a messy exit for sure.
Yeah, you don't want to make one of your offensive linemen mad. That's not something you want to do.
It's a tough thing. That it's the reality of the portal these days, that coaching staffs, you have the ability to upgrade. You want to go and try and upgrade. But if a player sees that you're trying to make a move, he has the ability to hit the portal and is probably going to go leave. So we'll see what happens and how that works out for him at Alabama.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But we've got several days. We've got several days in the offseason to figure it out. That's for sure.
That's pretty much all we've got from a portal update standpoint. Let's take a quick break here, and we'll be back. We'll talk about some early thoughts on the SEC for 2026, early top 25 rankings, early conference predictions. We'll give our thoughts. But first, let's hear about Voice of College Football bets.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.
There we go. And that's why you tune in to VOCFB Bets for Mark Rogers, Steve Dace, Matt Zimick, Corey Bratta, and for those under the radar pits of weeks, Steve Merrill, all right there on VOCFB Bets.
All right, so ESPN has already released their way too early top 25 of the college football season in 2026. Mark Schlabach putting that out. Let's run through this. And what we'll do is we'll hit the top 10, obviously highlighting the SEC teams that are there. And then just outside of the top 10 where we have SEC landing. So real quick, we'll just run through the rankings. Number 1, Indiana. Give them credits to the defending national champs. Number 2, Texas. I'm sure Longhorns will be a team that we'll discuss quite a bit here. Number 3, Notre Dame. Number 4, Georgia. Number 5, Oregon. Number 6, Ohio State. Number 7, Texas Tech. 8, Miami. 9, Ole Miss. 10, Texas A&M. As for other SEC teams in the ranking, the Oklahoma Sooners check in at number 12. Scroll LSU at number 15. I probably should have written this down ahead of time. And then at number 21, the Alabama Crimson Tide. And then 24, Tennessee. So I did not count how many teams that is. What is that? Was that 8 teams from the SEC? Probably.
So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, 8.
All right, 8 SEC teams in the preseason top 20, or way too early top 25. But what are some of our initial thoughts? I mean, is there anybody who stands out? I guess we can start at the top here. Texas, preseason number 1 team in the country a year ago. All the hype in the world. And they kind of fell flat on their face. They're getting a ton of hype once again. I kind of feel like I get it, though. Like Arch Manning, the way he played down the stretch, like looked – Arch Manning, if you did not sell your Arch Manning stock after the first couple weeks of the season, you came away very happy with how the year ended because by the end of the season, he looked like the player everyone was projecting him to be. On the rest of the offense, like there's a ton of overturn, but they brought in Cam Coleman at receiver. They had Hollywood Smothers at running back, Raleek Brown at running back, Melvin Siani at tackle from Wake Forest. Also have Trevor Gooseby back, which offensive line was a struggle, but Gooseby was a good player. And then the kid from Wake Forest as well kind of bolsters things. So you feel like you've upgraded your offensive line. You have Ryan Wingo returning, who especially down the stretch last season played really well. So some big-time weapons in the receiving core. I think the show needs harmonica. Shout out to Godfather. Big-time talent at running back, which running back production was not what they wanted last year. The offensive line should be better. Defensively losing a lot for sure, but they do still have Colin Simmons back up front, which is a big part. Like if you got a pass rusher like that along your defensive line, that's going to at least give you a starting point. And, shout out to Will Muschamp taking over as defensive coordinator because we need to see that once again. I think Texas is going to be legit next year.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that just because and you mentioned that they got all that hype last season and fell flat on their face. But here's the thing. They looked into the areas that they were weak in the transfer portal, and they addressed them. And we've mentioned several already. You got the 1-2 punch at running back. Ryan Wingo and Cam Coleman is going to be your receiver duo next season, which should be fun to watch. And that defense was already very good. It only got better in the offseason. Of course, Rasheem Biles being added in there. You get a new defensive coordinator in Will Muschamp, who is, despite not what is not a phenomenal career as a head coach, is renowned as one of the best defensive minds in college football the last 25 seasons. So, I look at this Texas team as maybe the most talented in the SEC on paper, just based on everything that we've seen this offseason.
Talented on paper, no doubt about it. But can Texas put their money where their mouth is in the 2026 season? I think that's going to be the question that we have heading into the off season, heading into the spring, heading into the summer. And as we get closer to the season, can they get the job done? That's going to be the question. 2026 feels like put up or shut up time for the Texas Longhorns because they're going all in on offense and going all in throughout the roster.
What do we feel about Georgia at number 4? I haven't fully formed my opinion on the Dogs just yet. You know, you got your quarterback returning, obviously, and there's always plenty of talent there in Athens. And I guess on the one hand, I'm not really hurt by some of the guys they're losing, to be completely honest with how those guys performed over the course of the season. But do we think we're looking at a surefire SEC contender? It's Georgia. They're going to be an SEC contender. But are we a surefire team that we feel great about them within the top 5 preseason?
You know, I look at them with Gunnar Stockton coming back. I think that's a big part of why you like them so high, or at least the poll likes them so high, right? Because he's got a starting season under his belt, and he was good for this season for Georgia. I mean, really out of the gate, you saw it in the Tennessee game, helped to play against a not so great defense, but they got better as the year went on. Now defensively, they were kind of iffy at points in the season. Again, they did get better toward the end of the year, but a bit rough at times. But you lose some guys to the portal. Obviously, you're going to have some guys go to the draft from Georgia as well. But I just think with where they are with Kirby Smart, I think you have to put them near the top of the SEC. Are they deserving of number 4 ranking overall? I think that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I'm curious. I feel like Georgia's in that just right ranking at the moment. But the question is going to be throughout the season is, are they going to fall again in the quarterfinals, in the playoffs, if they do make it? Which, I mean, they will, of course. But are we starting to see if Georgia is one of those teams that succeeds in the regular season, but just falls apart in the postseason again like they used to? That's going to be a question throughout this offseason.
They're going to need a lot of younger and new faces along the defensive line to step up. That's going to be the big thing for me. Like, their defensive line was not what you typically expect out of Georgia this year. They've reloaded the secondary pretty well through the portal. I've kind of already – I know they're losing C.J. Allen, but I kind of trust them at linebacker quite a bit. Receiver will be interesting, but look, Zach Branch is a solid player, but he's also the epitome of a gadget player, and it's very hilarious seeing him with first-round grades to this point. Like, I think they can find a way to replace it, but that is going to be a big thing, is figuring out receiver for them for sure, because they've just not been able to get that position right over the years. So, I mean, that'll be a team that's certainly going to be paying very close attention to. Anybody else in the SEC standing out? I mean, Ole Miss in the top 10, how much of that hinges on whether or not they get Trinidad Chambliss back?
A lot. It has to. Yeah. Because I saw that and it's just like, with all the portal losses, you got some of these guys going to the NFL too. And if you don't get Trinidad back, how good are you really? So, I mean, you could argue that Texas A&M is probably in a better spot than them going into the preseason, or not preseason, off season, and they're ranked below them in these rankings, if I'm not mistaken. And you could even argue LSU is a better team on paper at this point than Ole Miss is if they don't have Trinidad. So I think there are multiple SEC teams that could have a legitimate gripe over Ole Miss at this point. Like, I get it. They're coming off a college football playoff, and Golding proved some mettle with that win over Georgia. But at the same time, like, if you can't get the quarterback position right next season, whether that's obviously the Trinidad thing is important, but let's say Deuce Knight is your starter and he doesn't tear it up, well, then what happens? So the Trinidad thing is certainly a big factor in it. Long story short.
I mean, look, Kalon Lacey back. That's certainly huge for them.
Too. Yeah.
And defensively, even losing Princewill and some of the other guys that are gone, I like the defensive portal haul quite a bit. I think they've done a good job on that side of the ball. It's figuring out on offense, but some of what they're losing at receiver, offensive line, holding on to Delano Townsend after he announced he was returning. hit the portal and then decides coming back. Really good interior offensive lineman. That's big for them to have him back. Look, I think Ole Miss has the pieces in place to be a really good team. If they don't have Chambliss, though, I don't know. Like, I feel like you're talking about a team that's kind of 8-9 wins if it's Deuce Knight at quarterback, as opposed to a team that is top 10 playoff contention. If you get Trinidad back, I would feel very confident they're going to be up there. A&M in the top 10. I might have more thoughts on that in a second. I'm not. I'll save my thoughts here, but I'm not super high on A&M right now. I think Oklahoma could outperform top 12 potentially.
Yeah,
I know there's quite a few key losses there, but I mentioned it a few weeks back. I like what the Sooners have done in the portal. What else stands out to you guys amongst these rankings?
Just in terms of the SEC, I'm trying to think. Like, Bama is in there, and obviously it makes sense that Bama's in there just because they've been in these rankings for a long time. But you look at the portal haul; it's not overly impressive compared to some of these others. Like, they're not selling themselves super well to guys in the portal like they've been able to under Saban in the past. Not that the portal was huge back then, but they were able to bring in lots of talent. And you're not entirely sure who their quarterback is going to be next season either. It's, I guess, a 2-man race at this point. So, kind of interested to see them in there. At this point, I guess to a degree it makes sense because they're lower half of the top 25. But again, a lot remains to be seen there.
Yeah, Jackson, let's talk about your tide a little bit. And we didn't really get into some of the portal class and some of your thoughts there. Where are you landing on this team?
Well, I think 21 is way too low on Alabama, to be honest. Like, I get that things aren't like what they were in the Saban era, but I mean, at least have Alabama at like a 13 or a 15. That's what I would have them. Because I mean, like, USC at 13, way too high in my book. That's way too high. Because, like, if anything, USC falls apart when the hype is on them. And, we don't really know what Michigan is yet with Whittingham. We're going to wait and see what happens. LSU, way too high. I get that the portal, they've been doing very well on it, but come on. 15, LSU, way too high. Way too high. Louisville at 14, way too high. So 21 for Alabama for me is way too low. Way too low.
Bama's still a team. It's similar to me for Georgia that I don't know yet. There's so much overturn to the roster, which is not something you typically see with Alabama. And it to be fair, of the guys they've lost some very talented players, but a lot of them also, were up and down. I don't think they've lost a true superstar to this point to the portal, but they're also replacing a few key guys. And some of the guys coming in, I don't know for sure who is stepping in as a true stud. I think Bama's got a lot of questions. I don't feel strongly. I don't hate the ranking because I think if you're giving them a top 25 nod, you're still saying, like, look, we think this is probably going to be a really good team, but we don't know for sure. Maybe top 20 would be a little bit more fair. But I think there's a lot of questions there that do make it somewhat justified. But I hopefully I have more thoughts on that at some point soon. Elsewhere, Athlon Sports put out preseason early predictions for the SEC. I keep saying preseason when literally we
have a long way to go to preseason.
Before we get to that, Andrew, we didn't get to ask Tucker what he thought about Tennessee being ranked at 24th. Too high, too low, or just right?
I'm understanding of it. We'll just put it that way. But as I texted you guys before the show, you could buy this team as a dark horse playoff contender in 2026. Just to be completely honest, if the defense gels with all the talent that it's acquired, you've had an overhaul to some extent with defensive staff. You kept your linebackers and defensive line coaches around. Strength and conditioning, that is a huge hire that they made this week, getting Derek Owings from Indiana to Tennessee. A big part of the reason why they made it. I mean, all their players were crediting him for really helping them on their journey this season. And then I think the big question remains with Tennessee, if you're going to talk about them as a potential college football playoff contender, is what the lines of scrimmage look like and what the quarterback situation is like. If you get Joey Aguilar, I'm for sure buying them as a dark horse playoff contender. Now, here's the deal. Think about the Josh Heupel teams we've seen so far. What is the one team that has made it to the college football playoff? That team is the 2024 team. That team had a terrific defense, but kind of average quarterback play. And you could be looking at that this season with Tennessee, potentially not having phenomenal quarterback play for some of the season with George McIntyre if, Josh Heupel doesn't have him fully ready or phase unbranded. But overall, I think this is a fair ranking for the time being. But I look at this roster. It's very well constructed for Tennessee in this offseason. I think they've done a tremendous job. So I get it. I'll understand it for now. But don't sleep on the Vols going into 2026.
Mississippi State's obviously number 3. No, I will say, like, there's, depending on the last couple portal moves, I'm selling myself that I actually think the roster could be in a pretty good spot for State, but no, I'm not projecting any of that. Let's talk about some SEC predictions, though. And this is from Stephen Lasan from Athlon Sports. Already put out.
He's a good one.
Yeah, fantastic. Already put out his early SEC predictions for 2026. We'll run through these, and we're not going to spend – obviously, some of these teams we've already given our thoughts on. Each of us, what we're going to do is we'll give one team that we think is too high, one team that we think is too low within these rankings. So I'll run through them real quick, and then we'll all give our little roundtable discussion. He's got Georgia as his preseason SEC champion. That's interesting. Texas at number 2. That's probably who I would take, but number 3, Texas A&M. Number 4, Oklahoma. Number 5, LSU. 6, Ole Miss. 7, Alabama. 8, Tennessee. 9, South Carolina. 10, Florida. 11, Missouri. 12, Auburn. 13, Vanderbilt. 14, Mississippi State. 15, Kentucky. 16, Arkansas. Jackson, I will start with you. Who is too high in these rankings?
Texas A&M for me is too high. It was a tie between Texas A&M and LSU, to be honest. But the way A&M ended their season, they're going to have to show a lot of people why they've got the right to be in the top 4. Because honestly, the first 11 games, they were pretty good, but it's just the way Texas A&M ended their season is still stuck in my mind. It's still just stuck in my mind.
So I was going to go to Tucker next, but you actually had my answer. So I'll elaborate that on more further. Yeah, I'm not high on Texas A&M, and I alluded to this earlier with the top 25 rankings. Look, I like Mike Elko a lot as a coach, and I recognize there's still a ton of talent in College Station, and they've brought in some talented pieces in the portal. And if those portal pieces hit, then yes, we could be talking about a team that once again is contending in the SEC. However, they're losing basically the entire offensive line. I think it's one starter back. That O-line was the strength of that team. That was one of the very best offensive lines in the entire country last year. And it's the reason, yes, they had great skill talent. It's the reason that offense was as strong as it was. I was going to say dominant. That's not the right word, but it's the reason that offense was as strong as it was throughout the season. They've brought in, 4 former starters, I think SEC starters out of the portal to step in. Well, you all heard my offensive line portal spiel earlier. I do not trust portaled in offensive lines, even if the guys were starters at other programs. So I think just naturally you're going to take a step back there, but there's a chance this doesn't end up being as strong a group as was expected. I think, their in-state rivals, Texas, was a great example of this. 2 seasons ago, Texas had multiple NFL draft picks on that offensive line. They lost 4 starters, and there was just an assumption, they'll figure it out. They're fine. They're Texas. They should always have good talent on offensive line. That offensive line sucked last year. So I'm not saying anyone's going to suck on the offensive line, but losing those pieces, that matters to me. I think skill positions on offense, Ruben Owens at running back, Mario Craver, Ashton Bethel-Roman, Isaiah Horton transferring in from Bama, even with Casey Concepcion, Le'Veon Moss gone, yeah, okay, they've got weapons. I'm not a believer in Marcel Reed. I don't think Marcel Reed is that good of a quarterback, just to be completely honest. And then you add in the fact that Colin Klein is left to go be the coach at K-State, Holman Wiggins taking over the play calling. I know nothing of Holman Wiggins' play calling ability. I'm not here to say that he can't call plays, But Colin Klein was a very, very good OC. So are you for sure going to just keep that going? I feel like some offensive regression is very possible for the Aggies. Defensively, I mean, they're losing a ton on the line of scrimmage. Again, like it's almost every big contributor on that defensive front, from the edge rushers, Cassius Howell, Deion Haynes, and the guys in the middle of the defense, they're gone. DJ Hicks at tackle, TJ Searcy at edge, like those are still good starting points. And I know they had some quality transfer ads, but Torian York has gone at linebacker. And I think they still got good talent at linebacker. I think the secondary, Des Ricks, Dalton Brooks, you bring in Ricky Gibson from Tennessee. I think they'll be good in the secondary. I think A&M will probably be fine on the defensive line too. I think they'll be a solid defensive team. I think they'll probably do enough on offense. But if we're talking about them as, they were a top 10 team in the preseason ESPN, you got them as number 4 in the SEC, number 3 in the SEC in these preseason rankings. I don't think the Aggies are going to finish top 3 in the SEC next year. I think they have a fine season. I don't think they're a playoff team in 2026. Tucker, who is too high?
Yeah, I mean, you guys were right about A&M. They were for sure a scheduled beneficiary from this past season. I want to be a little bit different, though. I'll start by saying this, and this is probably a giveaway. I'm glad that Josh is not here because I think looking at Oklahoma, right, the formula the past couple seasons has been, let's have our defense come out and, just suffocate everybody, and our offense will do just enough to get us over the hump. And sometimes just enough is kind of hard to watch at times. And they're riding into the season with John Mateer at quarterback again. Oklahoma fans, Josh, I know is one of these, have floated the theory that John Mateer wasn't actually hurt. He just wasn't actually playing that well over the course of the season. Now, whether or not that's true or not, I don't really know the answer. But, can you bank on another 10-win season with that kind of football? And looking at their portal class, like I'm sure they've made additions to try and help that offense out a little bit. But I don't know if I trust them to be a top 4 team in the SEC, especially with this thing expanding to 9 conference games.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm probably a little bit more of a buyer on Oklahoma. You mentioned, adding guys on offense. Trell Harris from Virginia and Parker Livingstone from Texas. Also Rocky Beers at tight end from Colorado State. They had to play a lot of young offensive linemen, so that group probably has some more experience coming back. I think they could be better offensively. Defense is losing a lot, for sure. They're not going to be as strong on defense. I do still think there's a couple nice pieces, both on the front and the back end. And I do trust Brent Venables with that side of the ball. I mean, I think OU could be a good team. But, look, I mean, we had them number 4 here. That might be a little high. That's a totally fair point to go with. Who's too low? Who Jackson?
Alabama. Alabama's too low.
I mean, I know you explained in the top 25 your feelings on the Tide. I mean, do you want to elaborate any further?
Honestly, I feel like, everybody's going to see that Alabama's much improved. I think the passing game's going to be improved. And we're going to see the trenches really improve going into the 2026 season. The offensive line, I think, is going to be really improved. And that's definitely key to a successful season, is an improved offensive line. I've got a good feeling about where things are heading with the Alabama Crimson Tide. The defense, I mean, you've got Bray Hubbard and Keon Sabb returning. You're going to have Yahtzee Pierre coming back. You're going to have those guys coming back. And I think you're going to see, what's going to be happening with the Crimson Tide. When we see Alabama play Kentucky in week 2. And I think you're going to see more of that Crimson Tide magic on October 10th against Georgia.
Tucker, who's too low in the SEC?
Yeah, this might sound crazy. I'm going to go with the Kentucky Wildcats on this one. They are
I considered them.
They're sitting at 15 in this we keep doing it. These way too early projections for 2026.
That's my fault.
But here's the thing: 15. When you have this kind of a portal haul, Will Stein is coming in. They're going to be innovative on offense. They're not going to do the whole 3 yards in a cloud of dust thing that Mark Stoops liked to do for so long. Just ground and pound, run the football well, and play defense. That kind of boring Big Ten style of football, stereotypical Big Ten style of football that they had up there. They're going to be a little bit more fun to watch this season offensively. Now, how they'll look defensively, I think, is one question we'll have to keep an eye on, just because the bulk of their acquisitions this offseason, I believe, have been offensive guys, at least the ones that they've been puffing their chests about. But I could definitely see this team doing more than being the 15th best team in the SEC. Again, we'll have to refresh on the schedule. That could also play a part in their ranking too. I'm sure that's the case with Arkansas being at 16, and that's where they finished this year because their schedule was impossible for them to handle. But overall, I think there's a lot of confidence in Will Stein. I mean, there's always going to be confidence around new coaches, no matter where you go, anywhere in the country. But I think they're moving in the right direction.
I definitely think Kentucky could be a really interesting team for sure. Kenny Minchie at quarterback, C.J. Baxter, Devontae Barnes coming in at running back, Nick Anderson at wide receiver. If he can return to the form that he had shown previously in his career. The O-line haul was pretty impressive. I mean, the aforementioned Lance Hurd, even if he's not a dominant left tackle, is a solid starter within the SEC. Also bringing in Colton Price from Baylor, Tegra Tishbola from Ohio State. So really reloading that side.
That was a big one too.
Yeah. You're right about the defense. There's not a ton of huge names there. Although Antonio O'Berry from Gardner-Webb, I know a very talented player. So, they're going to have to figure out that side of the ball a little bit more for sure. But the secondary, though, Jordan Castell from Florida, Aaron Gates from Florida. So, there's some neat pieces stepping in. I think Kentucky's a team that could certainly take a big step forward in year one under Will Stein. I'm going to actually go with the Florida Gators. I think there's a chance Florida could have a solid year. One, I'm a big believer in John Summerall. I just think he's a dang good football coach. Two, the coordinator hires Buster Faulkner at OC, Blake Baker at DC. I think that trio of coaches, I don't know who their strength coach is, which that's probably the next one that people talk about as the most important. But if I'm putting together a big three of head coach coordinator combinations, Summerall, Faulkner, and Blaker is top 3 in the country. I think there's a case to be made. I think that highly of John Summerall and those coordinators. So, one, I think there's a chance for some immediate impact just from a coaching standpoint. Look, some of the pieces coming in as well. I'm going to sound like a total hypocrite here because of what I talked about with Texas A&M, because Florida is losing a lot on the offensive line as well. A couple NFL guys gone for sure. I'm not talking about Florida, though, as being a top 3 team playoff contender. I'm just talking about the Gators as being a team that could have a fun season. So my standard's not going to be quite as high. And I think they have a little bit more returning on O-line than A&M does. Have transferred a lot there. But look, from a skill talent standpoint, I think they're still going to be fantastic. You get Jaden Ball back at running back, which is a huge deal. Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown, Eric Singleton comes in from Auburn. So, they've got dudes in that offense. Aaron Philo at quarterback is someone that Georgia Tech was incredibly excited about. He knows Buster Faulkner's system. He performed well when he had to step in for Haynes King. And I talked about the offensive line as, that could be a concern. Faulkner's one of those OCs who knows how to just scheme stuff up to kind of help you out there. So I think offensively there's a chance that thing clicks. They've got some promising young talent on that defensive line coming back as well. They have their top linebacker returning. So I think there's some really intriguing pieces there in Gainesville to put together a solid team in year one. Again, I'm not talking about a team that's breaking into playoff contention or upper echelon SEC, but do I think they can be better than 10th in the league? I think that's totally possible. So, yeah, well, obviously we'll have a lot more thoughts on where these teams stand. We're still not fully set from a portal standpoint. We'll figure out where things land from an NFL draft standpoint for sure in the coming days and how that impacts teams. Going to have some draft content pretty soon because, hey, we have the Senior Bowl coming up. So we wanted to take a look at the Senior Bowl pretty soon and take a look at players from the SEC that go out there to Mobile and how do they perform? What are some of the early thoughts for them in the NFL draft? That's going to be something coming up within the coming days. We're going to be back Friday night Jackson we rescheduled in honor of the national championship game. So we'll have a Friday night pod. What was the time on that?
7:30 p.m. Central Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, all right here on SEC at the Voice of College Football. But at 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, there's something big going on at the Voice of College Football Network. And it's something you want to check out on the main channel of the Voice of College Football. And it's the annual State of the Voice College Football Address, where you will hear a lot about the progress that the Voice of College Football Network is making and the magic that's coming up all right here for Mark Rogers and friends. We're the friends, of course. So I can tell you right now, but it all seriousness though, it's going to be a fun, wild ride. You're going to want to check it out. It's an annual event, and it's something I recommend for you to check out all right there. You can check it out at Mark Rogers VOCFB on YouTube. That's the YouTube handle. And that is where you can find it all right there. And gentlemen, I'm looking for something nice on Valentine's Day. I don't know what I'm going to get, but we've got some merch from the Voice College Football merch store. So I'm thinking this is like a pretty good Valentine's Day gift. I mean, it's not chocolate, but I mean, it's pretty good. What do you think, gentlemen?
Voice of Chocolate Footballs. That's what we're rebranding to.
Voice of College. Well, yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Oh, man. But yeah, so, we've got the T-shirts, the polos, the hats. We've got them all. We've got them all right here.
I can think of nothing more sexy to wear to Valentine's, your Valentine's date, than a Voice of College Football hat, sweatshirt, polo.
Valentine's of college football.
There you go. Well, I know that's how I'm going to celebrate my Valentine's Day, while watching Be My Valentine Charlie Brown and making sure I'm buying some Voice of College Football gear. It's the perfect gift all right there.
Absolutely, yeah. No, go check out the great merch from the Voice of College Football. And like Jackson said, Friday night, going to want to tune in for the State of the Voice of College Football. And then you can watch SEC Live at the Voice of College Football. So just a perfect schedule of events for you to keep up with. Appreciate everyone who tuned in tonight. If you haven't already, please leave us a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel and have the notifications turned on so you do know when we do go live. You can keep up with Jackson at Alabama at the Voice of College Football and the Jacksonian. Tucker at Tennessee at the Voice of College Football and College Football HQ for Sports Illustrated. And me at Maroon and White Nation and Mississippi State, Voice of College Football. We will see you all next time.
Stay safe, stay warm.